Hey everybody, Jay Schlansky here from the Fifth Trooper Network. I just want to take a moment to thank you for checking out this show. Did you know that over at thefifthtrooper.com we have tons of other content, including blogs, other podcasts, all kinds of stuff. In addition, if you want access to exclusive content, you can join us on patreon.com/thefifthtrooper and join at any level and you'll get access to exclusive blog articles, access to our private Discord, and much more. So please check us out, and thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and Hank Edley. How's it going, gentlemen?
Hey. Going well.
So, Hank, why don't you tell us who you are?
So, for those in your audience that do not know me, I'm Hank Edley. I am one of the directors of the Adepticon convention. One of the principals behind that show.
How long have you been in a running Adepticon role?
So we started Adepticon back in 2003. So, been involved with Adepticon really since the beginning. Been one of the principal organizers for all but that first year, and been involved in really the transformation from an 80-person event back in 2003 to an event that drew almost a little bit over 8,000 this year, 2024. Yeah.
8,000. That's awesome.
It's a ton of people, man.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I got to say, ever since Adepticon has been in Chicago, which has been pretty much the whole time, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in Chicago, so I kind of grew up around Adepticon and never actually made it there until I was an adult.
Sure.
And no longer living in Chicago. But yeah, it's always had that nice local feel to me.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that it's been going that long. But my oldest son now is kind of that's the track on years that my kids are getting older. So we started this thing. I didn't have any kids, so now they're 20 plus years old.
So this is like a Adepticon. This is basically like a side job for you. Is that right? Obviously, it's not your full-time job running Adepticon.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been a hobby, right?
Yeah.
So for honestly for all the organizers of Adepticon, it's something that we started because we were active in the hobby space and in the sort of gaming convention space, and kind of thought back in 2003. It's kind of back when Games Workshop was doing their games days, and they kind of went through a phase where they kind of expanded to do them in the US, and then we're kind of pulling back from doing grand tournaments. And we all sort of thought like, well, maybe we can run a show that we always wanted to attend. And that's kind of what started it, and really grassroots sort of thing. But yeah, not my full-time job. I make a living, doing cybersecurity work. So that's what I do.
Okay. Two very different things.
Two very different things.
Yeah. Can you tell us about kind of the background work that goes into actually running Adepticon and putting it on?
Well, I mean, there used to be a time when we would put on Adepticon and we'd have, a couple months of a break, after the show, before we had to kind of kick into gear and really start the hard work of planning to do another year. But really the size and scope now of Adepticon, it's really year round. We're working years in advance. So, I know folks saw that we've announced a move to Milwaukee from Chicago. That's been something that's been in the works for a couple of years. We we came out of COVID with a certain amount of a certain amount of requirements that were still kind of hanging over our head from having to survive that whole process. But we knew then that we were going to come back and probably need to start looking for a new venue. We kind of hoped that the Schaumburg would put into place the expansion plans and the parking decks that they had kind of had on the books, but we weren't seeing a lot of movement on that, and really knew, a couple of years ago that we needed to get something in place. But it takes, it's really a year-round effort, especially on the terrain front. But we kick off planning, really every month we do a staff meeting. Pretty much every day I'm talking to somebody about Adepticon in some form or fashion, and I'm not alone. There's a whole team of people that help support and put on this show.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know a big part of any miniatures gaming convention is terrain. Can you talk a little bit about everything that goes into that for Adepticon?
Well, I mean, for those that were there and in the Atomic Mass Games Hall, I think you saw that we had, 140 or so tables of Legion. We had 34 tables of Shatterpoint, another 70 or so tables of Marvel Crisis Protocol, significant amount of terrain. We have to store it all, right? So not only do we have to make it, but we have to store it. So we have a large storage facility. But again, that's a year-round effort of building upon kind of what our prior year situation was from a success standpoint. And I think we built something like 3,000 pieces of terrain last year for Adepticon 2024. We got a big terrain plan in place to support kind of the growth and really this move, because essentially we're committing to a facility where we can double in size. So that kind of means double the terrain. So it's going to be a big effort. But yeah, I mean, we have a team of there's probably 60 to 80 people year round that are involved in helping in the terrain effort in a variety of different capacities. Some are here at my house almost every weekend. Some are only contributing remotely, but it's a big team effort, and super fortunate to have a bunch of talented people involved in it. But and it's changed over the years, right? So 20 years ago we were rolling out felt, like big bolts of green felt that we were carrying around, and that was the table surface that folks played on. And obviously then the neoprene mats kind of came into market, and we shifted to that. And heck, we still have some terrain that we built probably 15 years ago that's still in use. It's still great, it's still functional, but we're constantly having to, you would think like you might catch up, you might get to the point where you have enough terrain to support all the events you're doing. But the issue is, like, some companies coming up with a new game that requires new terrain, or they got a new kit, or the rules to train in a certain game change, so now you have to restructure exactly how things work. So going to be it's always something new, always something more we have to do.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about the scale of an operation to paint that much terrain, and assemble, really, and print. I mean, can you give us like a little bit more detail about that? Like what your process is for, the life of a terrain piece in Hank's garage or wherever else it comes from? Like,
sure. I mean, we try to come together and figure out like where, let's just take 2025 for instance, right? We're looking at 2025 and going, where do we need to put some time and resources in improving the terrain aspect of the event? In general, that means, where do we have events that are growing and have opportunity to grow? in this case, I'll speak to like Lord of the Rings. The organizer for that event has done a great job kind of building a community and growing that. We haven't, from a Adepticon train perspective, dedicated a lot of time and resources to helping him build up that event. And so we're looking at it from a standpoint of, that's going to be a terrain project that we're going to tackle this year. And what we will typically do is we'll think, well, how many tables do we want to build? How many sets is that? And so say we're going to build 24 tables, we may say, all right, we're going to do 6 different sets of 4, right? And then figure out what those pieces are going to be, whether we're going to go to a vendor and work out a deal to get actual plastic injected kits, whether we're going to go out and find STL files from the myriad of vendors that are out there that provide those. And, depending, it might be a mix. And then we'll figure out like how many pieces do we have to assemble, build, print. We'll divide the printing up. We have a number of people. We have a big print lab here in my garage, but we'll also farm it out to some other Adepticon staff folks, other Adepticon trained team members that have 3D printers. And then we'll kind of, we'll work a spreadsheet, Google Sheet, and make sure that we've hit all the various components that we need to print. And then, the idea, and this really has been a transformation for us for a number of years, is Adepticon has a huge hobby seminar community with a lot of very talented instructors, very talented folks involved in that. And when the volume of terrain that we needed, or the change of around we needed, grew out of what we could do locally, the idea was like, well, why don't we kind of schedule certain weekends during the year that we will bring in this hobby talent, and really with the advancement of airbrushing and advancement of materials. So we very often, what we'll do is we'll get a set of terrain. Maybe we'll get all those 24 tables of Lord of the Rings ready, primed, staged, ready to go. We'll schedule a weekend. We'll fly in, drive in folks from the hobby seminar realm, and we've got a big pool of very talented people that'll come in. We'll spend 3 solid days, 12-hour days, painting it. And by the end of those 3 days, it's pretty much done. And we'll watch some bad 80 movies, or whatever. we have kind of our own little film festival, and we'll hang out in the garage, and this get 14 airbrushes going, and just paint some terrain, have a good time, eat some good food, and put things where they need to be.
Man, I have enough trouble with my one airbrush.
Yeah. And again, we're very fortunate. We have great sponsors, great vendor relationships. I'm definitely spoiled because, we have like 36 airbrushes sitting there, and, I'll get to the point where, it's clogging on me or spitting on me or whatever. And I'm like, do I take the 10-15 minutes to clean it, or do I put it in the cup and grab a fresh one and go? And, to some of the other spray teamers, angst, I'm kind of the guy that, puts it in the cup of isopropyl and grabs a fresh one and keeps going.
Just leaves a graveyard of clogged airbrushes.
Cleaning that turns out to be somebody else's problem, probably.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about like once, because obviously, just getting terrain to the point where it's painted and together is a lot of work in and of itself. But like once it's there, how do you get to the point where you're actually making tables that you can then take to the convention and have people easily like pull out and put on, actual minis gaming tables, to the point where it's not just a disorganized mess?
Well, I think that's a work in progress, right? And I'm sure there's plenty of folks who are putting out Legion terrain this time that were like, there might be a method to this madness. But ultimately what we want to get down to is, we've standardized on a set of totes. We use the Costco black and yellow totes. We probably buy more of those totes per capita than probably most other places. And we try to get to a point where essentially a table or two tables is to a tote. And then we know that particular tote goes with a certain mat, and that we're able to then deploy those totes, and we've got a table layout fleshed out of what color mats go where and where those tables are going to go. That's the ideal. In reality, it doesn't really work that way. And in particular, look, I grew up playing miniature games. I was a very competitive miniature player when I was younger. Adepticon's really kind of consumed most, between Adepticon and family, consumed a lot of my cycles of free time. And so we're really reliant upon industry people on what makes a good Legion table, or what makes a great Marvel Crisis Protocol table, and what's especially with a new game like Shatterpoint, what does a convention Shatterpoint table really look like? And so we're constantly tweaking that. New additions of things change things on us too, which really kind of throws us for a loop at times. And it's just a lot of effort, but ultimately it's a piece that, from an Adepticon perspective, we take really seriously, because for us it's like people are coming to the show, they want to experience something that maybe they can't experience in their local environment where they play or at home. So it's important that the terrain be painted to a high standard. And we're not going to, certainly anybody that takes a lot of passion and creates a table and puts their heart and soul in it and paints it can paint a table better than we're putting on. But when you look at the overall volume that we do, and the quantity, and then the quality of what that's all done to, I think it's pretty good.
Do you have like a favorite set of terrain that you put together for any of these games that you're just like super proud of? Like a specific table or a set of tables?
Well, my wife and I actually kind of teamed up this year and painted a set of Shatterpoint terrain that we were kind of getting to the point where we had like 32 tables of Shatterpoint, and we knew that there was going to be some popular league play going on, and that we're going to need some additional Shatterpoint tables, and we had enough extra Shatterpoint buildings that we'd built to kind of throw together another couple tables. And really took the opportunity for my wife and I to team on painting that, and turned out really nice. It might be my favorite set of Shatterpoint terrain. How about that?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember seeing that terrain. I mean, the paint standard on that was really impressive.
This is some of the tallest Shatterpoint terrain I've seen too. It was like some of that stuff was like 3 or 4 levels high. I was like, dang, man. Like I certainly don't own enough Shatterpoint terrain to like do the triple stacking yet, but I'm looking forward to the day I can maybe swing that.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to like trying to put on something that people aren't necessarily going to have in their game room or at their store. So give them an opportunity when they come to Adepticon to play on something that they don't get an opportunity at home to do.
So you referenced earlier the move to Milwaukee. Can you talk a little bit about kind of like the reasons for that and what it went into that decision-making process? And also, what people can look forward to in Milwaukee versus the Schaumburg location?
Sure. So, for those that attended Adepticon the last couple of years, you'll know, like we've kind of been out of space, and that, in being out of space, and we've been out of space a number of different times, right? So Adepticon's moved. I think this is be our 5th or 6th venue over the 20 years that we've put on the show. So this is just one move. in a series of moves that we've done. But we have gotten to the point where a couple of years back we stopped taking public event submissions. We're really at our limits. We had to move Armada due to the demand in the Atomic Mass Games Hall. We had to move Armada and Armada players, and that was a very tough choice to move them to another location so that we could have the space for the other events in that main hall and just make room for everything. And so, I mean, there comes a point in time where your space constraints are starting to make things difficult on you from a decision standpoint. And then for anybody who's tried to park at Adepticon the last few years, the frustration. Like you aren't going to get a spot, and if you wait too long. And the village of Schaumburg had plans to build this parking deck, and as with a lot of different government projects and programs, there's delays. And I have no doubt that the Schaumburg Renaissance was a great facility for us, and I have no doubt that they'll eventually get a parking deck built and maybe even get the expanded space that they have on the map, on the road map done. But it just wasn't going to be in time to do us any good. And so if you accept, right, the premise that Adepticon had outgrown its current facility and we needed to move somewhere, the locations that we could move that would check the boxes that we would need to check are fairly limited, right? There aren't many bigger venues for conventions than the one that we were currently in. And in Chicago, it essentially meant you either stepped up to go to the Donald Stevens Center in Rosemont, which we're very familiar with. We've looked at multiple times. We've been to a lot of events there. Or you were looking at going into downtown Chicago, McCormick Place, which is the largest convention center in the US, if not maybe the world, and just sheer amount of square feet. But both of those venues had significant challenges and costs associated with them. Every choice, there's pros and cons. And so when we really started looking at different things and places to move, I was probably on the group. My co-director, Matthias Weeks, a team of folks had gone up to look at the Baird Center in Milwaukee, which is kind of the old home of Gen Con, but they'd been going through a 4-year renovation where they were essentially redoing the entire facility. It's essentially brand new, been totally remodeled, revamped, new digital, new new wireless throughout the whole facility, and then they added on a significant additional space. I think they doubled their exhibition space during the course of this project. So they were like telling me like, "Hey Hank, you got to go up, you got to check out Milwaukee. We think it's really great." And I was kind of the last holdout. I'm like, "No, we got to keep Adepticon in Chicago. Like, it's a Chicago show. It's got a Chicago identity. We need to keep it there." And I made a number of attempts to kind of revisit Rosemont in particular and really look at that option. And quite frankly, if it had been remotely close, I would have pushed for it. But I ended up going up and checking out Milwaukee in the convention center space, and I was there about 5 minutes, and I'm like, this is it. This feels like Adepticon. And it's literally like taking what we have currently at the Schaumburg Renaissance, moving it to Milwaukee to a space that's, 4 times bigger, but yet it still feels like the show. And that was a big concern of ours, was making sure that, that it didn't lose the vibe. I mean, Adepticon's kind of got I know I'm not subjective in this, or I'm not objective in this. Adepticon has this real vibe to it, and a feel to it, and it's really important that we keep that same feeling about the show. And it really came down to, do we, go with a venue that might be a little bit easier and convenient to get to. Probably was going to be more expensive for the majority of our attendees and vendors, but it would be still convenient to fly to get to from a Chicago perspective, but potentially lose kind of the essence of what the show is. Or do we go with something that might be a little harder to get to, but would still be, familiar to everybody, and build on that success that we've had over the years. So it really didn't, ultimately at the end of the day, it really didn't become a choice. It was kind of a clear decision that we needed to make.
Can you tell us a little bit about the actual convention center in Milwaukee and maybe the area around it?
Sure.
Maybe tell us a little bit on the new location.
Sure. So, so the current space that we have, right, the Schaumburg Renaissance Convention Center, we have a convention center space that's about 99,000 square feet, and we have about another 40,000 square feet of venue space between the other ballrooms and other breakout rooms, and it's connected to a hotel that has about 450 hotel rooms that we have as part of our Adepticon block. So the Baird Convention Center has a convention center space very much like what the Schaumburg has, only it's in excess of 330,000 square feet or something like that. It's big. And so if you think about what the Atomic Mass games area of the convention hall that they had in 2024, and you double that, that's the space that we'll have available for Asmodee and Atomic Mass Games events next year. So twice the space. So Armada can come back in. We can expand events. We can run other events. So we can put more space between tables, give a little bit bigger aisleways. So that space, and we're going to essentially, first year, we have options on really the entire facility, kind of right of first refusal on space. But for the first year, we're essentially doubling the event space that we currently have at the Schaumburg. We're essentially doubling that space, moving to the Baird Convention Center. In addition to that, there are a number of connected hotels that are connected to the facility via Skywalk. And by Skywalk, I'm not talking about having to walk, on a skywalk a mile. Like it's essentially, you come off an elevator, you walk down the hallway through a double set of doors across the street, and you're into the facility. So it's a pretty much a straight shot. And we're going to have it in excess of 1,000 hotel rooms that are connected to the venue. So, if you've paid attention with Adepticon over the last couple of years, and people are always lamenting they didn't get in the main hotel, well, we're more than doubling the available rooms that are connected to the facility. And then even if you don't get into that space, or maybe you don't want to be in that space, you have, probably, I don't know, so there's something like in excess of 3,500 hotel rooms within a 4-block radius of the facility. So, walkable, within minutes. In addition to that, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, one of the perks that I've always found at Adepticon was the shuttle that runs in between all the hotels. Are you guys planning on doing something similar in Milwaukee?
Well, I mean, we shouldn't have to.
Sure.
I'm just being honest, right? I mean, the shuttle that was running between the Hyatt and the Schaumburg, we did at our expense to really take advantage of, there was 1,200 additional parking spaces over at that Hyatt, and make it so that folks could easily get between the two properties. We won't have that need now. And this is probably one of the biggest differentiators, and maybe a thing that kind of changes some of the feel of Adepticon is, when you came into the Schaumburg Renaissance, you were kind of on an island. you know, if you wanted to leave to go anywhere, you needed a car, you're probably losing your parking space, and, you know, good luck.
Yep.
And so what that forced people to do is kind of stay at the venue,
Yep.
which was good to a certain extent, right? Because it really forced people to stay on site and socialize and do things on the property. But now we're going to a place where, I mean, I don't know how much you know about Milwaukee, but you know, downtown Milwaukee, the number of restaurants and pubs and, you know, good beer that you can find, you know, it's abundant. And so one of the things that'll be new, certainly for Adepticon attendees, is being able to actually go out in the evening and take advantage of some of the local area things that Milwaukee has. You know, there's evidently a great German restaurant I've not been to called Mater's that I got to go see. There's a place called the Safe House that sounds interesting to check out. So, and there's a fawn statue, right? So, right? So, I mean, it's going to be an opportunity for all of us to have kind of a new adventure. And there you go.
Yeah, as much as I love the Schaumburg location and how there's some real nostalgia there for me, I think the biggest drawback of that spot is, like you said, you can't walk anywhere.
Yeah, so it's unwalkable.
Yeah,
paid a lot of money to Uber drivers in my stay there.
I mean, and you know, the other piece to that is it's March, so like, you know, even if it was somewhat walkable there, you never know what the weather's going to be like.
yeah.
And,
I mean,
you know,
it snowed last year.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
It's not Adepticon unless you get all 4 seasons, right?
Right.
So
That's
Yeah.
very fair.
it typically works. But I mean, you know, the other beautiful thing about this facility we're moving to is, once you're there, yeah, you can take advantage of all the stuff around, you know, in downtown Milwaukee. But if the weather's not good, everything's by skywalk. And so there's not only skywalks to the facility, but then there's skywalks to this 3rd Street Market, which is like a 22 food court, like, and I'm not talking about like fast food court. It's like more higher end sort of food court with shuffleboard and other things. I think there's like a Top Golf there and some other stuff. So, you know, if we do end up in a situation where the weather's not great, you know, still means that majority of our hotel rooms are connected, and the majority of stuff to do can be traversed without having to go outside.
That sounds like a party to me.
Yeah.
So we kind of buried the lead a little bit. But of course, AMG did announce that they are going to do Worlds in 2025, and they announced that it would be an open instead of an invitational. Can you just tell us a little bit about that event?
Well, sure. I think the exciting thing about it is that you know, Worlds is going to apply across, you know, all 5 systems now, right? Where Worlds traditionally has been X-Wing, Armada, and Legion. They haven't had a Worlds before for Marvel Crisis Protocol or Shatterpoint. There will be Worlds for Marvel Crisis Protocol and Shatterpoint. The idea, and you know, we've been talking about, you know, how events at Adepticon with Atomic Mass Games would be for a long time, and kind of what the long-term vision is for things at Adepticon. You know, we laid that out many years ago. And you know, essentially, right, when you look at the world system, and I think, you know, they made that in their announcement, the travel that they used to cover, and you know, the qualifying nature of it were 2 things that you know, are sort of problematic, right? So not that it couldn't be done, it just was a lot of overhead and time and resources to maintain that. So when you look at like doing an open worlds, which is a format that I'm a fan of, I think you know, the ability for people that want to go and participate to Worlds to just have to sign up, makes a lot of sense. So, the limiting factor then becomes essentially, what sort of slots and spots are available for people to sign up for, because at that point, right, you can kind of make your plans, and as long as you get a ticket, you're able to come and compete, and if you make the cut, you'll continue on in Worlds. So, the good news is, I think I indicated earlier, right, we've doubled that hall space. We had 140 tables of Legion last year running. We can conceivably do, some pretty big heats in that regard. So I think, I can't necessarily kind of gaze at my crystal ball and predict exactly what the demand will be for open worlds formats, because it's obviously a little different than an invite system and a qualifier sort of system. But our intent is to work with Atomic Mass Games and support as many players participating as possible at Adepticon. And I know they're committed to putting on a great event for the community and for the for all the participants and players, and I'm sure we'll make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, one of the really awesome things about Adepticon this year was like getting into the hall and like looking out over the largest sea of Legion players like we've ever seen in one place all at the same time. The idea that you guys are like expanding the space to potentially, have even more than that is it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing the expansion allows us to do is, we really, from an Adepticon standpoint, try to offer a diverse and varied schedule of events. So, depending on what sort of thing is your jam, whether you like playing in a highly competitive event format, or whether you like playing in a doubles and a team format, or just casual league play, or even just casual pickup games, we try to offer a wide variety of options, because we know, like, not everything that's developed and put forward is meant for everybody. And so there's not one size fits all sort of thing. And so, having almost 66,000 square feet to devote to Atomic Mass Games and Asmodee events and game systems should allow us to continue to have, the varied event formats that we've always traditionally done, and at the same time, host some really big Worlds events.
Yeah, I know one of the worries that I've seen from people with the change to an open format is, like, am I going to have to basically refresh my way to make sure that I get in here? It sounds like, based on your expansion of the space, that's probably not going to be something that people have to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, we've certainly looked at kind of what the numbers were last year. We're able to add those numbers up, right? And also add up the number of people that participated in the LCQs, and kind of come up with a number of what we think's feasible and reasonable that we might expect to show up and attend, and then size things appropriately. I don't know that I'd wait 2 weeks to sign up, but
Yeah.
once Adepticon registration goes live, and if you're remotely responsive to getting signed up, I think chances are pretty good that most people are going to be able to get a ticket.
Can you tell us a little bit about, I know the AMG announcement mentioned heats. Can you tell us a little bit about the format? I know we're almost a year out here, so a lot of these details will be fleshed out when we get closer, but is there anything you can tell us on that front at the moment?
Not really, probably any more than was in their announcement. I mean,
Okay.
I think we have some solid plans for how we sort of vision that. But like you said, we're a year out, and we're going to kind of see how things, you know, unfold over the next few months as we work on Adepticon 2025 planning and work with, you know, all of our partners on events, because quite frankly, right, we've doubled the space for Atomic Mass Games in that area, but we've also done the same thing for a lot of our other key partners and vendors. And so we're going to be busy figuring out how you know how we're going to be able to fill up a lot of that space. So it's exciting for me because quite frankly, we've been under so many limitations for a lot of years now. It's refreshing to me to be able to think like, what are the possibilities and opportunities to do now that we know we can have a 24-hour gaming hall.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
We can have, you know, an area where, you know, one of the big things that's changed, right, is this sort of stuff, where there's all these podcasters and influencers out there, and a number of them have contacted us over the years, been big supporters of our event, and they're like, hey, you know, do you have any space for us to hold a gathering and just meet our fans and meet the audience and have a little, you know, shindig or whatever. And, you know, we've been out of space to be able to support that, but now we're going to be able to have a dedicated space to be able to support influencers, podcasters, you know, shows like this one if they wanted to, right, to do you know, to do a little gathering and spend some time with their listeners and their fans. Haven't really been able to do that and offer that up. So there's the opportunities are endless and exciting. And you know, normally, quite frankly, like I get done with Adepticon, and certainly, you know, from a staff perspective, I see this. You get kind of that fatigue, right? You get through the event, you got it done, and you just get exhale, and like the last thing I want to do is deal with something for Adepticon for a couple weeks. But like, really, to a person, we're all super excited about the opportunities that this new venue presents, and, you know, really jumping right on it again. So yeah. But I mean, I guess back to your original question, heat wise, I mean, I think I mean, we know what heat formats have been like, right? So, you know, there's going to be an opportunity to sign up for one or more potentially. You know, those heats will be fixed, and then you'll qualify people into your Saturday, Sunday formats. You know, I think the interesting thing for us to try to figure out is, you know, we know, right, on the X-Wing front and on the Legion front in particular, big demand for attendees for that. What, you know, we've never ran a Worlds for MCP or a Worlds for Shatterpoint. You know, what's the demand look like for that? And I was happy to see that the Shatterpoint events all sold out last year. You know, so I expect that we'll have a good turnout, but, you know, it's probably not Legion numbers, right? So and thankfully, because I don't want to build 140 Shatterpoint tables.
As awesome as that would be, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, and that's one of the things too, right? With Legion, and I know, you know, Kyle, you and I've talked about this, and you know, the thing about building those tables, I mean, they're 6x3. There's a lot of terrain on it, and you can't just replicate, like, you know, one table theme for 30 tables and another table theme for another 30 tables. People want to come and have kind of an immersive experience in the Star Wars universe and play on tables that they kind of recognize. So whenever it's, you know, it's Genoshan or a Mandalore table or Mustafar, or, you know, all those environments have to be kind of represented. And so it's challenging to put together Star Wars terrain for sure and hit those marks.
But I mean, you guys did it this year when there was essentially a doubling in size of the tournament from the previous year. So
yeah, I mean, we were fortunate too, right? I mean, we had you know, Nick provided some tables. Some of the community provided some tables. We didn't hit all those tables on our own, and we did a lot. But you know, it was definitely a community effort to get all those tables together. Certainly kept me up at night wondering if we were gonna, you know, meet expectations for that amount of tables. And you know, I think it worked out. I mean, you know, I'm certainly, I have a reputation for being kind of relentless. So, you know, there's certainly things I would have done differently or a little better. And we'll have an opportunity in 2025 to do that.
I mean, I'll just say that all the feedback that I heard or saw about the tables this past year was just great. You know, I think there was definitely some people, myself included, that were like, are they really gonna, you know, are we gonna be spreading some butter a little thin over too many pieces of bread here?
Right.
And the answer clearly was no. I mean, the 140 some odd tables that were there for the World Championships were great. So, and that's just Legion. You know, the other stuff was all great too. So, I certainly have faith that that you guys can meet expectations for the expanded size. So
Yeah, for certain. I mean, and look, we have, you know, we have great partnerships within the community. Atomic Mass Games has been a great partner. They've been extremely supportive and helped us in a lot of different ways to make sure that we could put on a great show. And so I expect that to continue, you know, long into the future. So I'm excited about what 2025 will bring for sure.
So one question just in closing, not necessarily about the World Championships, but just a general thing. What is the most rewarding thing for you about helping to run an Adepticon? And just like putting it on generally.
Well, I think there's definitely, I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for a lot of people that are involved in the show. I mean, I can't lie. There's a special feeling of walking into that hall and seeing, you know, thousands of hobbyists and people that enjoy tabletop miniature games as much or more than I do, and see them have a great time, and know that, you know, you had a part in making that experience for them. And I know that, like, one of the things that that Matt and I are very fortunate about, that we have other people involved in the show that take that responsibility just as you know, what would I want to say? Just they take that just as deeply held sort of belief that, you know, it's their responsibility and to put on this show in a professional manner that brings those sort of experiences to people. And so very fortunate, top down, all throughout the convention, that we have great people that really love what they're doing and love putting on this show for people and take it very, very professionally. So that's probably, you know, the biggest thing. It's always fun to see a kid though too, right? That's having a great time, and father, son, some parents and their daughters. You know, I think that's the other, not to lead us in, but the diversity of what Adepticon's become from what it was 20 years ago to now, with the number of kids and you know, spouses and you know, women and the transgender movements that are involved in our show. Just how all that's expanded. Satisfying to see that as well.
Yeah, I've brought my kids a couple times. I'm originally from Chicago, so I still have family
Yeah.
there. So usually when I go to Adepticon, I bring my kids, and I've brought them to the show a couple times, and they're, you know, my oldest is 7.
Yeah.
But she's like, I mean, both of them really. I have 3 kids, but I don't bring my youngest because he would destroy the place.
Sure.
He's a bull in a china shop. Definitely not something you want in a miniatures gaming convention. But the older 2 just absolutely love it. Whenever I show up, they're asking tons of questions about what everything is. You know, they love looking at everything that's like all the amazing painting, the painting competition with Golden Demon, and just walking by all the tables and seeing all the miniatures on the tables and everything. They're always like super fascinated. So, and I'm grateful that that's like a space where I can feel comfortable bringing them. Um, I don't know that I could say that of like every gaming convention, but Adepticon's a place where I've always felt like I could show up with my 5 and 7 year old and feel totally comfortable just walking around with them and talking to people. So
Yeah, I mean my kids, so my youngest now is 12, my oldest one's 21, and they essentially grew up with the show. And I could always know where I could find them. They'd either be at the big Titan battle game, or playing, pounding games of BattleTech or whatever. And I always knew that they were well taken care of by folks at the show.
all right, well, we just want to thank you for your time, for coming on. Thank you for everything that you and your team and everyone else does to put on Adepticon. I'm looking forward to it for 2025.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully we get into the BattleTech simulators this year. I didn't have time last year, but
well, hopefully now we've got more space, we can actually get maybe a few more pods, right? Because that's when that thing really, I spent a lot of time at North Pier in Chicago, driving up there and spending a lot of money getting into those things in those years before internet gaming. And
yeah.
I didn't make it into the pods either, but that was more of like, I knew if I got into those that I'd have some nostalgia moments, and it'd be hard to get me out. So I'm hoping we can bring those back in force. I know they were a hit, and and I really appreciate you having me on, and allowing me to talk about Adepticon and the move, and we'll have more to talk about with Worlds, and excited for this grand tournament circuit that they're putting together with the grand tournament kits that they're offering up. And so more events, more diversity, better for everyone. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, more events, more Legion.
More events, more Legion, for sure.
Yep. All right, well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
And Hank is our guest. And stay fresh, cheese bags.